Hey guys! Wave.
Oh. All right.
So, ow.
The lens gets wet.
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Hey guys! Welcome back.
In this video, we're going to share 10 basics about RV power systems.
Number 1. What are the ways of getting power while boondocking?
The main source of power for your RV is going to be either one or multiple batteries. The batteries are what keep everything running even when there's no shore power or a generator running. They act as a power buffer and give you a power reserve in between charges. Of course, a battery only has a limited amount of power in it, and you'll need to recharge it from time to time, depending on your needs. How often you charge your batteries is entirely dependent on your usage and the type of battery that you have. The main way of recharging your batteries is with shore power. Generally, small RVs come with a 30 amp connection, while larger RVs come with a 50 amp connection. However, since this video is geared towards boondocking, we're going to talk mostly about the off-grid charging solutions. Most RVs come with batteries that are just enough to support your basic needs. So if you plan on boondocking for a longer period of time, you may need to upgrade those. There are a few different ways that you can recharge your battery. Probably the most popular off-grid power solution is going to be solar. A lot of RVs even come with solar straight from the factory, or it's available as an option. For most people, a few solar panels on the roof are going to be enough to keep up with your daily needs. But keep in mind, those solar panels are generally just enough to keep the batteries charged with very basic usage. If you're going to want to run your air conditioner and microwave and hairdryer all off of batteries while you're boondocking, you're probably going to need to make some major upgrades to support that usage. For other types of campers, many of them have the option to use an alternator power system to charge the batteries directly from your tow vehicle's alternator. We are going to be installing that system on our own camper, and we'll put that video out when we have that system completed. Another tried and true method for keeping your RV powered up while you're boondocking is of course a generator. A lot of RVs come with a generator pre-installed in it, and those are pretty easy to use. They usually have an on-off switch on the inside of the camper, and you can just start it and stop it at will. For those of you who don't have a generator built into your camper, you can always bring one with you. That's what we do. We actually built our generator setup into the camper, as well as having the ability to remove it and run it when we need to. We did a complete video about that, and I'll leave a link to it up here.
Number 2. How is the power used?
Power usage is going to vary from RV to RV and person to person. Most RVs are going to have some things in common, such as lights, exhaust fans, the refrigerator. Even if you're running the refrigerator on propane, it's still going to need a 12-volt power source to keep the electronics in it going. And a lot of RVs are coming with 12-volt powered TVs like this one behind me. We're finding that a lot of people now need to use their computers in their camper, as well as they want the ability to run, say, a hairdryer, a microwave, or their air conditioner. And that's where an inverter comes in, to supply that 120-volt power needed to keep all of those things charged and running.
Number 3. What's an inverter?
So an inverter is a device that takes 12-volt DC power from a battery and converts it into 120-volt AC power. At least those are the voltages used in the United States. In many other countries, they're going to either use 220 volts or 240 volts. You're only going to need an inverter if you want to run AC powered devices. Things like laptops, cell phone chargers, hair dryers, a microwave, or even an air conditioner in larger setups. Inverters come in various wattages, like 1,000, 2,000, all the way up to 6,000 watts. There are different types of inverters. You're going to have a standard inverter, an inverter charger, as well as pure sine and modified sine wave inverters. An inverter shouldn't be confused with a converter that comes with almost all RVs.
Number 4. What's the difference between an inverter and a converter?
An inverter takes DC power and converts it over to AC power. A converter kind of does the opposite. Whenever you're plugged into shore power, the converter takes the AC power and converts that to DC power. That DC power is used to run all of the equipment in your camper, as well as keep your batteries charged. Another option is an inverter charger, which is going to take a converter and an inverter and combine them together. It'll have the features of an inverter, as well as producing 12-volt power to power everything in your camper and charge your batteries.
Number 5. What's the difference between pure sine and modified sine?
The difference between those two types of sine wave has to do with how AC power works, which is an alternating current. If you think of that AC power as a wave, you're going to have an up and down at a specific frequency. In the case for the United States, that's 60 hertz, 60 cycles per second. A pure sine wave inverter puts out this 60 hertz frequency in a nice, smooth waveform. A modified sine wave inverter is going to be significantly cheaper, but it's going to put out a different type of waveform. It's going to be more of a a square-toothed wave. For the most part, modified sine waves will work for virtually everything that you might need to power. However, if you're running any type of sensitive electronics or battery chargers, it's really highly recommended to use a pure sine wave inverter. For us, I didn't want to mess around with it. Every inverter that we use is a pure sine wave inverter. Also, our generator puts out a pure sine wave. That means that we can run anything that we want without fear of damage. Many modified sine wave inverters can damage electronics, either immediately or over time. Some of the other problems, if you're running a TV, a radio, or any type of recording equipment using a modified sine wave inverter, they can introduce a lot of hum and buzz into the speakers or recording. If you're undecided about whether you should get a modified sine wave inverter or a pure sine wave inverter, it's a safe bet to just get a pure sine wave inverter and not have to worry about it in the future. I'm going to leave some links in the description below with a few cheap options as well as some higher end options that might work well for you. There's a lot of resources on the internet as well as on YouTube about different reviews and different ways to use these devices. So please continue doing your research and feel free to ask us some questions in the comments. Running an inverter generally puts an extra load on your battery. A lot of the devices that require AC power are fairly high wattage. Things like hair dryers and microwaves consume lots of power. In an effort to avoid over discharging your batteries and to keep an eye on how much power you have, I highly recommend using some type of battery monitor.
Number 6. What's a battery monitor for?
A battery monitor is a device that lets you accurately monitor the state of charge of your battery. It's much more accurate than just monitoring the voltage. A very common way that people keep track of how much power is left in their batteries, especially lead-acid batteries, is to keep an eye on the voltage level. Most RVs come with a built-in voltage meter so that you have some kind of idea of what the state of charge is in your batteries.
Number 7. What types of batteries are there?
There's 3 main types of batteries. You have your lead-acid battery, an AGM battery, and a lithium battery. Lead-acid batteries are usually comprised of lead plates flooded with some type of acidic electrolyte. The usable voltage range for these batteries is typically between 12 and 12.6 volts. It varies depending on the manufacturer, and the higher the voltage you keep them, the longer they're going to last. The next type of battery is AGM, and that stands for absorbed glass mat. The main difference between AGM and flooded lead acid is that the acidic electrolyte is absorbed into some type of mat, usually some type of fiberglass. These batteries are sealed and won't spill, and they also don't release toxic gases when they're charging, unless you overcharge them. So you'll find that a lot of RVs that come with batteries on the inside of the living compartment will come pre-installed with AGM batteries. When we bought our camper, that's what they came with. We had 2 6-volt AGM batteries. They also have a slightly different voltage profile, and they like to be kept between 12 volts and 13 volts. Same thing with these. You want to keep the voltage as high as possible in them and recharge them as frequently as possible. It's best to limit the discharge to about 30% for the longest lifespan. The third type of battery is lithium iron phosphate, most commonly referred to as just lithium batteries. There are many different types of chemistries for lithium, but the most common one in RVs is lithium iron phosphate because of its safety. Lithium batteries have some huge advantages over AGM and lead-acid batteries. They're much lighter, they last a lot longer, and they can be discharged much more deeply. We went with lithium iron phosphate batteries for all of those reasons. They're lighter, more energy dense, and we can get more usable power out of them. The other huge benefit to lithium batteries is they don't care if you completely charge them every time, whereas lead acid and AGM do. With lead acid and AGM, it's really recommended to charge them fully after each discharge cycle. If you only charge them part way, it tends to damage them over time. With lithium, it's actually best to keep them somewhere in the middle, somewhere between, say, 40 and 80%. They don't like to spend too much time above 80% or too much time below 20%. So for the lifestyle that we live, which is charging occasionally from solar or from the generator, it's really nice to not have to run the generator until the batteries are completely 100% full. Another major advantage of lithium is their charge efficiency. Somewhere around 95% of the power that you put into a lithium battery is going to go towards charging it. With lead acid and AGM, somewhere between 70 and 80% of the power gets saved, which means faster recharge times and more efficient charging.
Number 8. How to use power safely.
There's a lot of things to talk about in regards to power safety. If you're not comfortable dealing with electricity or you have no experience with it, it's best to contact a professional for any type of upgrades or changes you want to make to your power system. 12-volt systems may not give you a zap if you touch them, but there's a lot of power in them, and they can cause injury and a lot of damage if something goes wrong. Using the appropriate type of cables and connectors is really important when you're building a system. For any type of AC power system, you really should consult a professional unless you really know what you're doing. In terms of keeping your equipment and your camper safe, the best thing that you can do is when you plug into any type of external power source, whether it's at your home or a campground, is to use a power filter. If you don't use one of the risks that you run is plugging into a pedestal at a campground or at someone's house and having a miswiring or a voltage problem destroy virtually all of the electronics in your camper. If you're ever reading online in Facebook groups or anything like that, you're always going to come across stories where someone plugged into the wrong type of pedestal, or there was a wiring problem with that pedestal, and it burned out the refrigerator, their microwave, converter, and everything else in the camper. And it can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to fix. We're going to leave some links in the description below for what we use, but ours is getting pretty old and there's a lot of new options out there. If you're just getting into RVing, definitely one of the things we would highly recommend getting before you go out is a power filter. Another really important aspect of power safety in any type of RV is checking the electrical connections from time to time. We personally had a problem where we almost had a fire because we had a wire get loose inside of our electrical panel, and during the night our air conditioner was running and overheated that wire. Luckily in the morning we noticed it and were able to fix it. Because of all the bumping and vibration down the road,
Oh, that was a good one.
screws and other connections have a tendency to vibrate free. So every couple of months I go through all of our electrical connections and make sure that everything stays tight. If you're not comfortable doing that stuff yourself, you should definitely contact a professional occasionally to have them review your system.
Number 9. How to conserve power.
There's a lot of different ways to conserve power. Of course, the most important thing is to only turn on what you need and make sure that things that don't need to be on aren't on. Another valuable thing is to install switches on anything that might be consuming power that you don't need. When we're running our inverter, we have a tendency to unplug the microwave since we're not actually going to be running it. There's a few things in campers that stay on all the time, and they should stay on all the time. Your smoke detector, your propane and carbon monoxide detector, and the electronics that run your refrigerator. If you shut those things off, that can be a real problem. But altogether, those things should only consume a few watts. And this is where a battery monitor comes into play. It makes it really easy to track how much power you're using for each device. It might take 2 people, but you can turn each device off and on and watch your battery monitor and see exactly how many watts it's consuming when you turn it on.
Can you turn the lights off? And then turn them back on?
You can use the battery monitor to determine how many watts you're using at any particular time, and it will give you an idea if certain lights or other devices are consuming more power than you think they should. We've installed this 4-gang switch box so that we can control our TV and stereo, our cell phone booster, and our hotspot. That way we only have them on when we need them. Another major improvement that we recently made was to install a second inverter, a small, efficient inverter that's used to just power our computers and other electronics. That way we don't have to worry about the losses involved with running a larger inverter like our main 2000 watt inverter.
Number 10. Additional tips on using power while boondocking.
If your refrigerator runs off of 12 volt battery power, make sure you switch it to propane to conserve your batteries. If you have any 12 volt power adapters, make sure that you unplug them if they're not in use. For the most part, you don't even need a microwave. We do most of our reheating just using a pan. It's a really good idea to clean the cooling fans in any converters or inverters in your RV. This can be accomplished using compressed air from a can or from an air compressor. And there's no need to make all of these upgrades or changes all at once. Do it over time as you need them. The more time you spend camping, the more time you're going to know what you need and what you don't. We've been going through this process for over a year now, and we're finally getting things the way we want them.
Thank you for watching. So if you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us grow.
And if you have any questions or thoughts, please let us know down in the comment section.
See you in the next video.
Bye!
Power is so exciting.
I'm so excited. I just can't hide it.
Can you hide it?
I know. I don't know the rest of the words. Continue.
So you don't know?
I'm going to slow that down and it's going to be perfect. Alright, what's the question?
What are the ways of getting power while boondocking?
That converter takes that AC power from the shore power. Привет, машина. That's an excellent question. A battery monitor is just a device to monitor your battery.
What do you think of the snow? Nothing? You try not to think?